Criminal Law Book 2. CLJ4-010. Theft, Robbery, Brigandage, Estafa and Malicious Mischief. Welcome back. In this lecture, we are going to learn to differentiate the crimes of theft, robbery, brigandage, estafa, and malicious mischief. Let us start. Understanding the difference between these felonies. Understanding the differences between theft, robbery, brigandage, estafa, and malicious mischief is crucial for several reasons, especially in the context of law enforcement, legal practice, and the general public's awareness. Here's an overview of the significance. 1. Legal precision in law enforcement and prosecution. Accurate charge filing. Law enforcement officials need to differentiate between these crimes to charge suspects correctly. Misclassifying an offense can lead to improper legal proceedings and potentially unjust outcomes. Appropriate response strategies. Each crime may require a different response strategy. For example, responding to a robbery, which involves violence, differs from responding to estafa, which involves deceit. 2. Judicial processing and sentencing. Sentencing guidelines. Correct identification of the crime affects sentencing since each offense carries different penalties. For instance, robbery generally has harsher penalties than theft due to the element of violence or intimidation. Legal defenses and plea bargaining. Understanding the nuances can impact the defense strategy in court. For example, the intent required for malicious mischief is distinct from the deceit involved in estafa. 3. Educational value and public awareness. Public understanding. Educating the public about these differences can help in crime prevention and awareness. People better understand what constitutes a crime and their legal implications. Victim assistance and reporting. Victims can more accurately report incidents to authorities if they understand what has occurred, leading to better investigation and restitution processes. 4. Academic and legal scholarship. Legal analysis and improvements. Scholars and legal experts analyze these distinctions to propose legal reforms or adjustments to better address and adapt to contemporary issues. Comparative law studies. Studying how different legal systems address these crimes can lead to improved legal frameworks and cooperation across jurisdictions. 5. Implications for civil liability. Litigation and compensation. Differentiating these crimes also affects civil lawsuits for damages. For instance, victims of estafa may sue for the recovery of losses due to fraud, while victims of malicious mischief may seek compensation for property damage. Understanding these distinctions is fundamental not only for the effective and fair administration of justice but also for enhancing societal lawfulness through informed community engagement and preventive legal education. This knowledge empowers individuals and institutions to act effectively and appropriately in both legal and social contexts. Theft 1. Legal definition and elements. Theft is defined under Article 308 of the Revised Penal Code of the Philippines. The legal definition comprises the following essential elements: taking of personal property. Theft involves the taking of personal property that is owned by another person. The property must be tangible and movable. Intent to gain. The act of taking must be accompanied by the intent to gain. This does not necessarily mean profit but any advantageous use of the property to the offender. Without the use of violence or intimidation. Unlike robbery, theft does not involve violence or intimidation against persons, nor force upon things like breaking into a building. Without the owner's consent. The property must be taken without the consent of the owner, distinguishing theft from other types of consensual transactions. Absence of other circumstances excluding criminality. The taking must not fall under circumstances that would otherwise legalize the act, such as taking property by virtue of a claim of right. 2. Common scenarios and examples. Theft can occur in a variety of settings, reflecting its broad applicational scope: shoplifting, the classic example where an individual takes goods from a store without paying. Pickpocketing, stealing wallets or other valuables from people's pockets or bags in crowded places. Theft of services, an example includes dining and dashing, where a person leaves a restaurant without paying the bill. Agricultural theft, stealing crops or livestock from farms. Utility theft, illegal connection to services like electricity and water. Each scenario underscores the adaptability of the theft definition to different forms of property and methods of appropriation. 3. Penalties based on the value and circumstances. The penalties for theft are graduated according to the value of the property stolen and the circumstances surrounding the theft, as specified under Article 309 of the Revised Penal Code. Up to 500 pesos, a arresto menor in its minimum 1 day to 10 days, or fine of not more than 5,000 pesos when the offender acted out of impulse of hunger, poverty, or the difficulty of earning a livelihood for the support of himself or his family. B. Arresto menor, 1 day to 1 month, or a fine of not more than 20,000 pesos when committed while trespassing to hunt or fish, or gather fruits or other farm or forest products. See arresto mayor in its minimum and medium periods, 1 month and 1 day to 4 months. More than 500 to 5,000 pesos, arresto mayor, 1 month and 1 day to 6 months. More than 5,000 to 20,000 pesos, arresto mayor in its medium to prison correctional in its minimum, 2 months and 1 day to 2 years and 4 months. More than 20,000 to 600,000 pesos, prison correctional in its minimum to medium, 6 months and 1 day to 4 years and 2 months. More than 600,000 to 1,200,000 pesos, prison correctional in its medium to maximum, 2 years, 4 months and 1 day to 6 years. More than 1,200,000 to 2,200,000 pesos, prison mayor in its minimum to medium, 6 years and 1 day to 10 years. More than 2,200,000 pesos, prison mayor in its maximum, 10 years and 1 day to 12 years, and 1 year for each additional 1 million pesos, but shall not exceed 20 years. Circumstantial increases, if the theft is committed with grave abuse of confidence or where the property stolen is particularly significant, like parts of a national infrastructure or religious artifacts, the penalty is more severe. Additional factors may also influence sentencing, such as the criminal history of the offender, the presence of mitigating or aggravating circumstances, and whether the theft involved elements that could elevate it to a different crime, such as robbery. Understanding these aspects of theft helps in both legal practice and public knowledge, ensuring proper legal proceedings and encouraging societal respect for property rights. Robbery 1. Legal definition and distinction from theft. Robbery is defined under Articles 293 to 305 of the Revised Penal Code of the Philippines. The defining characteristics of robbery are taking of personal property. Similar to theft, robbery involves the taking of personal property belonging to another. Intent to gain, the perpetrator must intend to gain from the taking of the property. Use of violence or intimidation, this is the key element that distinguishes robbery from theft. Robbery involves the use of violence against or intimidation of any person, or force upon things. Directly connected to the taking, the violence, intimidation, or force must be directly used to obtain the property from the person or premises. The use of violence or intimidation elevates the act from simple theft, which lacks these confrontational elements, to robbery, reflecting the increased social and legal gravity of the offense. 2. Different forms of robbery. The Philippine legal system recognizes several forms of robbery, each associated with specific circumstances. Robbery with violence against or intimidation of persons. This form occurs when the offender employs violence or intimidation directly upon a person to obtain personal property. Examples include street muggings or home invasions where residents are threatened or harmed. Robbery with force upon things, often associated with burglaries. This form occurs when the offender breaks into or out of a house, uses false keys, picks locks, or employs similar methods of force to enter a closed premises to steal. Highway robbery/brigandage. This involves robbery in public places, highways, or streets where the perpetrators may either be individuals or bands specifically targeting passengers or personal belongings. Robbery in an inhabited house or public building or edifice. This is a more severe form because of the violation of residential or public security. 3. Case studies and penalties. Case studies. Case study 1. In a notable case in Manila, a group was convicted of robbery with violence after they forcefully entered a home and intimidated the family members with weapons before fleeing with valuables. Case study 2. Another case involved a bank robbery where armed assailants used intimidation against bank staff and customers to access cash from vaults and tellers. Penalties. Robbery with violence or intimidation. The penalties can range from prison correctional, 6 months and 1 day to 6 years, to reclusion. Perpetua, 20 years to life, depending on factors such as the degree of violence used, injuries caused to persons, and the value of the items stolen. Robbery with force upon things. If the robbery is committed by breaking into a house, the penalty can be prison mere 8 years and 1 day to 10 years. If it involves the use of false keys or similar methods, the penalties might be slightly lower. Aggravating circumstances. Certain factors, such as the use of firearms, committing robbery at night, or as part of a band, can significantly increase the severity of the penalties. Understanding these various forms of robbery and their respective legal consequences is crucial for effective law enforcement, accurate legal proceedings, and the protection of societal safety and security. Brigandage. 1. Historical context and legal definition. Historical context. Brigandage has deep historical roots in the Philippines, primarily as a response to rural unrest and the prevalence of banditry in less governed regions. Historically, brigandage was linked to broader social unrest or resistance against colonial and later national authorities. Over time, the law evolved to address not just banditry but also organized crime that disrupts public order and safety. Legal definition. Under Article 306 of the Revised Penal Code of the Philippines, brigandage, or highway robbery/brigandage, is defined as the formation of bands of more than 3 armed persons for the purpose of committing robbery in the highway, or kidnapping persons for the purpose of extortion or to obtain ransom. Unlike casual robbery, brigandage involves a higher degree of organization and is committed by a band, making it a more planned and coordinated criminal activity. 2. Elements distinguishing it from other forms of robbery. Formation of a band. The primary distinguishing feature of brigandage is the formation of a band. This implies a structured group, typically with a leader and several members, which is organized specifically for the purpose of engaging in robbery or kidnapping. Specific intent for highway robbery or kidnapping. Brigandage specifically aims at committing robbery in highways or engaging in kidnapping for ransom, which sets it apart from ordinary robbery that might occur under different circumstances. Use of arms. Members of the band are typically armed, which underscores the premeditated nature of the crime and its potential for violence. Public nature of crimes. The crimes committed by brigands are typically public both in their nature and impact, affecting a wider segment of the public and instilling fear among travelers and local communities. 3. Penalties and modern-day relevance. Penalties. The penalties for brigandage are severe, reflecting its impact on public security. According to Article 307, any person found guilty of brigandage shall be punished by reclusion temporal in its medium and maximum periods if kidnapping was not involved. If kidnapping for ransom is part of the brigandage, the penalty is reclusion perpetua to life, indicating the high level of seriousness with which the law treats these offenses. Modern-day relevance. In contemporary times, brigandage remains relevant in the Philippines, particularly in regions where law enforcement faces challenges due to geographic and social factors. The crime is now often associated with larger issues of organized crime, including insurgencies and large-scale gang operations that might involve not only robbery but also drug trafficking and other illegal activities. The Philippine government's efforts to combat brigandage involve both policing and broader social policy measures aimed at addressing the underlying conditions that foster such crimes. Understanding brigandage in both its historical context and modern manifestation is crucial for developing effective law enforcement strategies and policies to safeguard public order and national security. Estafa. 1. Legal definition and types of fraud covered. Legal definition, estafa, or fraud, is defined under Articles 315 and 316 of the Revised Penal Code of the Philippines. It encompasses any act of fraudulently taking undue advantage of another's property or causing damage or prejudice through deceit or abuse of confidence. Types of fraud covered: fraudulent misappropriation, Art. 315(1)(b) misappropriation and conversion of money, goods, or any other personal property received by the offender in trust, or on commission, or for administration, or under any other obligation involving the duty to make delivery of or to return the same. Obtaining money or property through false pretenses, Art. 315(2)A using fictitious names, falsely pretending to possess power, influence, qualifications, property, credit, agency, business or imaginary transactions, or by means of other similar deceits. Fraudulent means, Art. 315(3)A through any of the following means: deceiving another by means of unfaithfulness or abuse of confidence, or defrauding another through false pretenses or fraudulent acts. Other deceits, Art. 316. This includes any other forms of deceit not mentioned in Article 315. 2. Key elements of deception and trust breach. Deception. The core element of estafa is deception. The offender commits an act that misleads the victim, who then relies on the false representation or fraudulent act. Damage or prejudice. The act of deception must cause damage or prejudice to the offended party. This can be economic, such as financial loss, or moral, such as damage to reputation. Abuse of confidence. Many forms of estafa involve the abuse of confidence, where the perpetrator exploits a relationship of trust to defraud the victim. Reliance by the victim. The victim must have relied on the false representation or fraudulent act. The reliance must be reasonable and directly linked to the incurred damage. 3. Examples and corresponding penalties. Examples. Example 1. A person collects investment money for a non-existent business, promising high returns. Investors believe the business exists and invest money based on false representations. Example 2. An individual rents expensive equipment and sells it instead of returning it to the owner. Example 3. A contractor receives payment for building materials but uses inferior materials, pocketing the difference. Penalties. The penalties for estafa are based on the amount of fraud or damage. They are detailed in Article 315 of the Revised Penal Code. Up to 40,000 pesos, arresto mayor in its medium and maximum, 2 months and 1 day to 6 months. More than 40,000 to 1,200,000 pesos, arresto mayor in its maximum to prison correctional in its minimum, 4 months and 1 day to 2 years and 4 months. More than 1,200,000 to 2,400,000 pesos, prison correctional in its minimum to medium, 6 months and 1 day to 4 years and 2 months. More than 2,400,000 to 4,400,000 pesos, prison correctional in its maximum to prison mayor in its minimum, 4 years, 2 months and 1 day to 8 years. More than 4,400,000 pesos, prison mayor in its minimum, 6 years and 1 day to 8 years, adding 1 year for each additional 2 million pesos, but shall not exceed 20 years. Estafa cases often involve complex evidentiary challenges and can have significant implications for the victims. The law takes a stern view on fraud, especially when there's a clear breach of trust, reflecting the serious social and economic impacts these crimes can have.